October 1918, the final month of the First World War. Deep inside the Argonne Forest of France, more than 500 American soldiers advanced into enemy territory, unaware that every step was leading them toward isolation, confusion, and disaster. They would soon become known as the Lost Battalion. But what happened in those 6 harrowing days remains one of the most haunting and misunderstood tragedies of the Great War. Was it courage, miscommunication, sacrifice, or something far darker? This is War Files Uncovered, and tonight we reveal the truth behind the Lost Battalion, trapped behind enemy lines. By the autumn of 1918, the Allied armies were desperate to break the German lines. The war had dragged on for 4 bloody years, and commanders believed one final massive push could finally force the Kaiser's armies into collapse. General John J. Pershing ordered the American First Army into the dense Argonne Forest, a sprawling wilderness of steep ravines, tangled undergrowth, and German fortifications hidden behind every tree. It was one of the most brutal battlegrounds of the war. Among the divisions sent forward was the 77th Division, the Metropolitan Division, made up mostly of men from New York City, clerks, laborers, taxi drivers, immigrants from dozens of countries, men who had never imagined themselves crawling through mud in a foreign forest under machine gun fire. Their commander, Major Charles Whittlesey, was a quiet, determined lawyer from Wisconsin, not the kind of man one imagined leading a desperate stand in the heart of enemy territory. But history has a way of choosing unlikely heroes. On the morning of October 2nd, Whittlesey was ordered to advance no matter what. The assumption was that French and American units on either side would keep pace. But in the chaos of war, assumptions can be deadly. As the 77th moved deeper into the forest, the terrain became nearly impassable. Thick branches slashed at uniforms, mud sucked at boots. German snipers fired from unseen positions. Yet, despite mounting losses, Whittlesey's men kept pushing forward. Then, the realization crashed upon them. The French on their left had fallen far behind. The American units on their right had been halted by machine gun nests. The 77th Division was now completely alone, a single spear thrust deep into the enemy's body, with no support on either side. Still, Whittlesey pressed onward. His orders demanded it. By midday, the battalion reached a narrow ravine near Charlevaux Mill. It offered brief shelter from incoming fire, and the perfect position for the Germans to surround them. And that is exactly what happened. German troops moved swiftly, quietly, sealing off the ravine from every direction. The Lost Battalion didn't realize they were trapped. Not yet. Their first clue came when runners sent back for help never returned. Gunfire erupts. Soldiers dive for cover. Their second clue was more terrifying. American artillery, believing Whittlesey's men were still far ahead, began shelling their position by mistake. Friendly fire thundered through the ravine. Trees exploded. Men dove into the earth. It was chaos, layered upon chaos. Whittlesey sent desperate messages back. "For heaven's sake, stop firing on us." But no reply came. For 6 days, the men of the Lost Battalion endured one of the most horrific sieges of the war. Food ran out first, then ammunition, then water. The Germans controlled the nearby stream, shooting anyone who tried to crawl toward it. Thirst drove some men to drink from puddles contaminated by blood, mud, and chemical residue. Snipers picked off anyone careless enough to expose a helmet above the trenches. Wounded men cried out through the night, but medics could do little. In the midst of this misery, the enemy tried a different tactic: persuasion. A German officer, risking his life, approached under a white flag and delivered a letter urging Whittlesey to surrender. It read in part, "You are surrounded. Your situation is hopeless. In the name of humanity, we ask you to surrender." Whittlesey didn't hesitate. He didn't stand up. He didn't send a reply. He simply refused. His silence echoed louder than any words. The Germans resumed the attack. With runners killed and radios destroyed, Whittlesey had only one way left to communicate with headquarters: carrier pigeons. Most had already been shot down. Only one remained. Her name was Cher Ami, dear friend in French. Whittlesey penned a final message, his handwriting frantic, smeared with mud and sweat. "We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." He attached the note and released the bird into a sky filled with gunfire. Almost immediately, a German bullet tore through Cher Ami's chest, shattering her breastbone. Another hit her leg, nearly severing it. But she kept flying, climbing, struggling, pushing through smoke and flak. 25 miles later, she crashed into Allied headquarters, bleeding and barely alive. But the message was intact. The barrage stopped. Cher Ami was later awarded the French Croix de Guerre for her bravery. Her preserved body remains in the Smithsonian to this day, a small creature who saved nearly 200 lives. On October 7th, reinforcements finally broke through German lines and reached the ravine. What they found was staggering. Men who had once marched with crisp uniforms were now gaunt, hollow-eyed, caked in mud and blood. Many could barely stand. Some were delirious. Others stared blankly, unresponsive. Out of more than 550 soldiers who entered the forest, only 194 walked out under their own power. Whittlesey was hailed as a hero. Newspapers celebrated him. Medals were placed on his uniform. He was invited to banquets, parades, interviews. But glory cannot erase trauma. Whittlesey was tormented by the memory of the men he could not save, by the screams in the night, by the faces of those who died believing rescue would never come. 2 years later, overwhelmed by guilt and unable to escape the ghosts of the Argonne, Major Charles Whittlesey stepped off a ship into the dark Atlantic Ocean and disappeared forever. His final letter hinted at the weight he carried. "I can no longer bear the burden." The Lost Battalion is remembered not only for bravery, but for endurance against impossible odds. Their stand exposed the dangers of miscommunication, the cruelty of the battlefield, and the resilience of ordinary men placed in extraordinary circumstances. Today, the Argonne Forest is quiet. Birdsong replaces artillery. Sunlight fills